has to do with sex. It is really quite a subject when you start breaking down words and terms and ideas and where they've come from. But for me, I prefer, because I've only been looking at it for 50 years, and I keep telling people I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I mean, I know how much I don't know. My God, there's a world of knowledge out there. You can go to any library in the world and sit and read till the day you die, and you need to come back 46 more times and not even scrape the surface of what's in one library, much less the world's libraries.
That's really the only way to gain any kind of knowledge in anything. I mean, because if you go out there with a preconceived notion of what something is, while you're looking into it, then you've got a biased opinion, and therefore you're not going to be able to really get down into what the truth of that subject would really be. So the type of mentality and the attitude that you're speaking about moving forward with that humble nature and understanding first, right off the bat, that there's a lot of things that we don't know, and we have to have that humility before we even try to seek these answers. Would you agree that that's really the best way to go about researching anything?
Yeah, but you have to remember, if Al Capone and his mob are running Chicago, and you're a detective, you got a wife and children, and you're going to be doing research on organized crime in Chicago, well, if you think you're serving the people, you better go back and think about it. Because if you are doing research and you're putting your nose where it don't belong, you can get hurt that way. The bottom line is, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so this is why today the scientists and teachers who have been taught themselves in universities to get their degree so they can get a work permit, so they can go out and get a job, and they were merely like a parrot. Like a parrot, they will tell you what they were told. They don't know, and all they know is what they took the test, they got a job, and they get a paycheck to teach you what their masters who taught them, what they wanted them to know, and now they're teaching you. So I learned a long time ago that I'm not interested in what important people tell me. I'll do my own thinking. So for me, it's just my opinion, but when it comes to this subject of how did we get here, I've looked at all of the ancient texts, and I haven't gone through all of them, but I've looked at a lot, and I've been around for 53 years talking about it, so I've come to my own conclusions.
We're here tonight with Jordan Maxwell, and we have one final segment left. And Jordan, every time, or the last time we had you on, the same thing happened. The time flew by rather quickly, but we wanted to try to at least give people something to think about after tonight's show so that they can go and look into these matters more on their own time. And what we were getting into there was the concept of human origins and your take and your opinion on that. So maybe you could continue to expand on that line of thought.
Yes. After looking at all of the ancient writings of the world and the ancient scriptures of all the peoples of the world, and traveling around the world and listening to and talking with astronauts and scientists and physicists and religious leaders, etc., I've been doing it for many, many years, and I've come to the conclusion that there is something very legitimate about what's being talked about in the Old Testament of the Christian Jewish Bible. The Old Testament in Genesis, I believe, is hiding some profoundly important information that very few people have even suspected is there. Because if you read it, from the King James or any of the other modern day versions, you're not going to see it. But if you break it down and into the occult understanding of the story, it's very overwhelmingly obvious in your face what the Bible is saying in the first few chapters of Genesis. Let me give you an example. As in Genesis 1:1, it says in the King James Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But that's not what it says in the original. It doesn't say that. Because God in Hebrew is El, E-L. El is God in Hebrew. But in Genesis 1:1, the word is not El. So you can't say it says God, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, because the word is not El. It's Elohim, a totally different word. And so the Elohim is like putting an apostrophe S on the end of the word car. Car is one, putting apostrophe S makes it more than one, cars. So Elohim on the end of L makes it a feminine plural. It's a plural, meaning more than one. And so the correct translation should be, in the beginning, the gods created the heavens and the earth. And of course, immediately the Christians will say, "Oh, well, no, that's God and Jesus Christ and the angels." No. We're talking Hebrew. We're talking the Jewish scripture. We're not talking the nonsense that the churches are teaching about Christianity. This is Hebrew. And go back to the old Jewish writings, and it says, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth." Elohim is God in the plural. This would explain why in Genesis 1:28, when God is creating Adam and Eve, it says, God said, "Come, let us." Who's us? What are you talking about, us? "Come, let us make man in our image after our likeness." Well, there's a very famous rabbi many years ago. I used to talk to him back in the 60s and 70s. And he brought out to me back then, he said that there's no place in the Hebrew Bible does it say God created man. Nowhere. You can't find it. It doesn't say God created man. And I said, well, then explain that. And he says, well, what it actually says, and to go back to Genesis 1:28, God says, "Come, let us." Well, first of all, who is us? And then it says, "Come, let us make man in our image after our likeness." And this is where Christians will say, well, see, there God is creating man. No. The word man in Hebrew is ish, I-S-H. It's pronounced ishi. I-S-H is man in Hebrew. But that's not the word that is used in Genesis 1:28. It's not God says, "Come, let us make ish." No, it doesn't say that. It says, "Come, let us make Adam," not Adam. We just added an A to Adam and make it Adam. No, there was no Adam. It's Adam, A-D-M, which means something in Hebrew. But happily, we don't know anything about that, so we just call it Adam. No, it's not Adam. Adam, A-D-M, means something in Hebrew. So the scripture says, "Come, let us make Adam after our image and after our likeness." And the rabbi told me, so what's being said here is, "Come, let us make man in our image, after our likeness." He's already here. But for being here, he's not that hot. So come, let us make him in our image. Let's make him in our image and looking like us. Well, that's different. "Come, let us make man in our image" means that man was already here. M-A-N, Ish was already here. But somebody came here and saw Ish and said, "Come, let us make man in our image." Therefore, they made something called Adam, which is a Hebrew word, which means something in Hebrew, for a new kind of creature.